And that's really at the root of being passion struck. It's aligning your mindset, your behaviors with the intentional micro choices that you're making daily that will either take you closer to your tsunami of greatness or your waterfall of despair. And it's your choice in your everyday life to pick which one you want to go after.
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. I just had the privilege of having a very interesting conversation with a pal, John R. Miles, who is a leading authority on intentional behavior change, personal growth, and mattering, right? His work is considered a beacon of inspiration and transformation. He, as a celebrated leader, captivating keynote speaker, and the host of the award-winning Passion Struck with John R. Miles. And I met John. I think I saw him on social, but then he invited me when Boundary Boss first came out. He invited me to be on his pod, and we had a really. He just struck me as such an earnest, and he had obviously read the book, and we really had like a deep, long conversation that was really satisfying. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So we stayed in touch. And he actually just 2 days ago released a book called Passion Struck 12 Powerful Principles to Unlock Your Purpose and Ignite Your Most Intentional Life. And I'm so interested in the concept of intentional living. I try so hard myself to embrace intentional living. So I hope that you really get something valuable out of this interview and conversation with my friend, John R. Miles. And I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. I'm super excited to welcome my friend, John Miles, to the Terri Cole Show. John, welcome.
Terri, it's so awesome to see you again. And I am so honored to be here. I just absolutely love you and your show.
The Mutual Admiration Society right here. I'm so excited, though, for this conversation because we've been talking about having you on the show, but we wanted to wait until you were birthing something new into the world, and you have birthed something new into the world. So let's talk a little bit about Passion Struck, shall we?
Yeah, let's get into it.
So the title of the book is Passion Struck 12 Powerful Principles to Unlock Your Purpose and Ignite Your Most Intentional Life. And John, I have to say,
Yeah.
I love. Oh, yes, please. Beautiful. If
There's
you're
a
watching us
copy.
on YouTube, you can see it. But I really am so, like, it struck me so deeply, the whole intentionality of all of your work. It's funny, I used to say years ago, before I even was barely doing what I'm doing now, that about for my therapy clients, how important it was for them to harness the mind-blowing power of their own intention. And it always seemed to be like this new concept. And you've taken it to this great other applicable level for us. So let's just start with, let's first, actually, I want to start, if you don't mind, more like a Marvel movie. I want to start a little bit with your origin story, and then we will move into how people can become more intentional, the 12 steps within Passion Struck and all the things. But tell me a little bit about you, because you left your C-suite job. Like, you have a whole backstory as to how you got here. So would you share that with us, please?
Yeah, I would just start that I grew up in a modest family. We were your typical American middle class family. I moved around a lot because my dad was in sales. Prior to that, he was in the Marine Corps. But I grew up born in Rochester, then moved to Cleveland, Ohio, Palatine, Illinois, outside of Chicago, and then spent most of my childhood in Pennsylvania, in York and Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So just above Baltimore or outside of Philly. At a very early age, I must have been fifth grade, had this just passion to work and to want to earn my way. And so as soon as I could, I got a paper out, and that turned out to be a really pivotal thing for me. I had it from fifth or sixth grade all the way to I was a junior in high school, and it just taught me so many life lessons, especially um, being a youngster and not really getting any help from your parents, of having to strategically deploy those papers where you went, but it also learned me how to have difficult conversations with people on the route, as well as how to manage finances. As soon as I turned 14, I took the first opportunity I could to work in giant food stores, and I really found this leadership calling inside. And so, as I was approaching my college decision, I had this clear path that had been set for me since the day I was born, that I was supposed to go to the University of Michigan, like my parents. I got in, and I had also gotten an appointment to the Naval Academy. And I just thought, if I am wanting to maximize my leadership acumen, there's no better place to do it than one of the best leadership academies on the planet,
Right.
and to serve and give back. And so it really led me to go to the Naval Academy. And that's where I was first introduced, I would say, to this power of intention. And I cover this at the beginning of the book. I remember reading Grit by Angela Duckworth, and in it, she does a great job of explaining her observing West Point cadets, and that it was their passion and perseverance that allowed them, basically their grit, to get through this grinding program and become successful officers. And I looked at that and I thought, well, she's got two-thirds of the equation correct. The one missing piece is, you can have all the passion and perseverance you want, but if you're not intentionally applying it to the behaviors you want to exemplify, then what are you doing? And it was interesting, Terry, because I wasn't able to get Angela on the podcast, but I got the next best thing, Katie Milkman. And I
Mm.
asked Katie, what would Angela think? What do you think? And she goes, you have a really clear point, and I think both of us would agree that it's that intention that is a clear factor in you reaching self-realization, or these self-mastery in whatever it is you want to pursue.
It's so good, and it's such a key to people pivoting in their lives. And I think that so much of what you're writing about is really people realizing, like, you have a choice. You have a choice of what you're going to do. So let's talk a little bit about, because for people who are struggling, and not sure what they should be doing in their lives. What do you say to people who are like, I'm not sure what my passion is, I'm not sure what I should be doing, but who want to know what that is?
So I would just have them look at my own personal story. So I, as I laid out, went to the Naval Academy, but after that and serving in the Navy, I ended up launching on this professional career, and I spent a number of years in management consulting with Booz Allen, and then in Big Four consulting with Anderson Consulting, and found my way into Fortune 50 companies, ultimately achieving what I thought was the pinnacle of success, which was
Mm.
being in the C suite at a Fortune 50 at 39 years old. I'm making, multiple seven figures. I've reached this thing that society has told me is kind of this pinnacle goal for you to achieve.
Right.
And yet I absolutely felt completely numb inside. I felt
Mm.
like nothing I was doing mattered. Like the meaning just hit me, like I've reached this point and here I am, and I feel like I'm wearing this mask of pretense. I'm turned myself into someone that is not authentically me. And I think a lot of people are facing this deep sense of, you could call it nihilism, I would call
Mhm.
it unmattering or anti-mattering. And I think it's what's leading so many people now to feel lonely, hopeless, helpless, and all these chronic epidemics that we're having, where people are just out of touch with their inner self. And so they get stuck. And I was stuck. I will have to tell you, I mean, it's so difficult to make a pivot when you're at this point, because here you are, you've got this lifestyle, you've got the house, you've got the cars, you've got the relationships that you're built, and everything is around this life that you've created to this point. But I then spent, I have to tell you, like a 4, 5 hard, arduous years of really doing self reflection and realizing that I was never going to be happy unless I started to pursue the mission that I was supposed to do, that I was put on earth to do. And I'm so glad at this point that I did, but that is such a difficult step to put yourself out there into the abyss.
How long did it take you to actually make the move from when you sort of knew you had to do it to when you actually pivoted?
Oh, Terry, it took me way too long.
Me too.
So even before I had gotten this job, I was getting these visualizations when I was practicing mindfulness, and I kept being shown these symbols that I was supposed to be helping. What kept coming to me was those who were battered, beaten, broken, or bored in their life. But I didn't know what to do with that. I'm
Right.
like, I'm a corporate executive. What the heck does that mean?
Right.
And so I think whether you believe in God or spirituality or the universe,
Mm,
I started having these hard lessons given to me in the form of catastrophic events that happened in my life, such as us finding that our house had almost $300,000 worth of termite damage that we had just bought and having to go through that. Finally moving to Florida, and then after one of the storms, realizing that we had black mold damage throughout the entire top of our house that we had to again spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to correct. To
mhm.
I mean, I could go on. Scorpions falling from the roof when I lived in Austin.
Oh my
To
God.
ultimately, Terry, what it came down to, I think, was it started out with me getting hit with the hammer, and then it turned into a bat, and then it finally culminated in November of 2017. I had taken my daughter to school, had gone to the gym. The gym had an electrical fire, so I got home much earlier than I would have, and
Mhm,
unbeknownst to me, a intruder had been canvassing my house looking for my patterns, and I just happened to pick the wrong day to walk in while they were still there, and so I encountered an intruder in my house pointing a gun at me.
mm,
And after eluding that situation, I had another tragic event that happened 3 or 4 days later, where my best friend jumped off the Skyway Bridge down here and
mm.
committed suicide. And it finally brought me to my knees, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, what I'm doing isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. How can I start leaving a legacy that I want to leave for my kids, and how do I start finding true happiness by pursuing this life that I need to craft that only I can do. So,
It's amazing to hear, though. I appreciate you sharing sort of the dark night of the soul experience where I feel like it's important for us to sort of, people who are out there in the public eye sharing the truth of what are the things that make us change. And reality, my story is similar to yours. There was lots of things that happened where I was like, the universe is lightly tapping you on the shoulder until it's finally just shoving you down a flight of stairs because you're not listening to what it's saying. Like, in your heart of hearts, you're not doing what you should be doing. So is this what inspired you? So you made the change, got it. You've got very, super successful podcast. You're a leader. You are a keynote speaker. You do all of these things out there in the world, sharing basically tips to help other people get themselves sort of unstuck, for people to live intentionally. So who would you say that you wrote this book for?
so I wrote it for a number of different people. So, first of all, the book is really me unpacking what happens when you reach the bottom. And the only thing that you can do is to build yourself brick by brick from scratch. And if you had to do that all over again, how would you do it? And so that's what I lay out. I call it the passion struck model, but it's got, if you think of this as three circles, two on top looking at you like an owl and one on the bottom, they consist of mindset shifts, which is kind of our what, which then guides our behavior which is driven by our values. And underpinning this all is something that I call the psychology of progress, or a simpler way to think of it is intentional action. And so it's those three things that come together. And so, who I wanted to help with this was, first and foremost, I wrote this for my kids. So, I'm writing it for this next generation of people who are just coming out of college, to give them kind of a roadmap of how do you craft a life where you can feel passion struck, where you can feel incredible significance in what you're doing, and ultimately joy and happiness by serving others through your innate talents. I've given it to the person I once was, this person who has been living behind this mask like I was, trying to uphold what society tells us we should be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and feeling stuck in this place where we're not authentically being ourselves. And then I would say that the next audience would just be people who are passionate about pursuing self improvement.
Yes. Okay. So in the book itself, you talk about three types of human mosquitoes, which made me laugh. Tell us a little bit about these people. How do we identify them and sort of not let them toxify our lives?
Right. So the way I organize the book is a series of steps. And so the first chapter, it's called Mission Angler, and it's really how do you life craft? And I highlight Jim McKelvey and Gary V in it. And then in the
Mhm.
second chapter, I go into, once you've figured out what you want to do, you've got to start reinventing who you are. And so I go through the story in that chapter of Dwayne The Rock Johnson and his journey to kind of illustrate this. And then once you get down that path, you then have to do a strategic self evaluation. And this is where the mosquito auditor comes in. This is really assessing your actions, your activities that you're doing, and those who you surround yourself with, and doing it like a strategic auditor. And so I kind of got this concept because I'm a big fan of Jonah Berger, and I had read his book Invisible Influence: The Hidden Forces That Shape Our Behavior. And it got me thinking, as I think I was listening to NPR, and they had this segment on the most dangerous animal on the planet. And as they're talking about it and people are guessing, I'm thinking, it's got to be one of these creatures down in Australia. It could be the tiny uh, little jellyfish that they have. It could be a
Right.
great white shark. It could, you're thinking all
Right.
these things. And yet, what it is the mosquito.
Right.
And the mosquito takes more lives in 1 year than sharks do in decades,
Wow.
decades and decades. It's like a million or more people per year. And the crazy thing about it is that they do it in a way that is so invisible to us most of the time. You don't realize you've been attacked by a mosquito until you're already bit. And I think the same thing goes by both the influences, the people around us, for instance, and the activities that we pursue,
Mm-hmm.
both of which are keeping us from living the life that we want to live. And so I identified in that chapter three different types of mosquitoes. The first is the bloodsucker. And I actually got this idea from you. So
Mm-hmm.
the bloodsucker is very similar to something you describe in your book is the boundary destroyer.
Ah,
It's manipulative people who want what they want from you and are going to do whatever they can to get it from you.
yep.
And I think this also goes to activities that you put yourself in that
Mm-hmm.
keep taking you away, your energy away, your sleep away from what you want to pursue. Then
Right.
I have something called invisible suffocators, and
Mm-hmm.
these are your glass half empty people. They cling to the status quo, and these are the people where you meet a new person you want to get into a relationship with, and all they can tell you is everything that's wrong with that person and the repercussions of doing it. The last type of mosquito is the PETA, or the pain in the ass. And these are those people who are two-faced. It's in business, that client that you might have who is doing everything that they can to put themselves the center of your universe, but then
Right.
disrupting everything that you're doing.
Right. It's so interesting. The when you were talking about the suffocator, so these are the misery loves company crowd, as you said, the negativity crowd, and I'm super passionate about avoiding these folks myself in general, like especially long term. And there was a study done not that long ago that basically said that spending as little as 30 minutes a day with a chronic complainer can negatively impact your own IQ. What?
What? I
I
mean,
was
it's so
like,
true.
it is. It is. But that was enough for me to be like, okay, it's not just my gut instincts that says avoid these people who are so, like, such a Debbie Downer to a degree. It's actually doing something bad to your brain. So I think this is all actually, it's such good, it's such good advice of things to be mindful of what we're doing, but it requires, John, so much of what you're talking about and so much in the book requires a certain amount of mindfulness, a certain amount of self-reflection. So can you tell us a little bit about your own? Do you have mindfulness practices, or what are the things that keep you on track doing what it is that you want to do intentionally?
Yes, I do. And for me, how you set up your day, I think, is extremely important to how it ends up manifesting itself. And so I'm a big believer in the 5 a.m. club, so to speak. I love Robin Sharma's concepts on this.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to apply everything that he says, but I get up every morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, if not earlier. And for me, it's those hours of the day that I can reserve for myself outside of the commotion. And so this is where the first thing I do is I go on about an hour walk with my dog. And for the first half hour, I don't do anything but just lay in my thoughts and my intentions for the day. I think about what I need to get done in that day. I think about the things I do a gratitude practice. I think about the goals that I'm trying to achieve. And I think about the self doubts that I'm putting on myself and how to work through them. So I purposely during this time don't put in anything into my ears.
Yep.
I just love being in the sounds of nature, that peaceful, quiet time. At that time in the morning, to me, it's just serene. And then from then, I go right into learning and I spend the next portion of the walk always listening to a podcast, either a guest I've got coming on or just a podcast that I like that I can learn from. I then do exercise. And after exercise, I come back and I read for about 25 to 30 minutes and then do a little bit of journaling and get on with my day. But it's that practice, I think, and staying true to it that sets up the rest of the day for what I want to accomplish. And then I front load all the most important things that I need to do, especially my writing or research, things that I know I have to get done at the beginning of the day. And then I set the less important things, such as getting back to email, administrative things, show notes, stuff like that, till
Mm-hmm.
the afternoons.
Right. So having a structure, having something that's sort of containing you and containing this intention to continue to do the things that you want to do, to produce the podcast, all the things that you do, because you do a lot in a day, you do a lot in a year, it seems. So how would you say for what would it look like for people to really embody the passion struck mindset? You talk about in the book about embracing discomfort, right? Taking audacious risks, fearlessly pursuing dreams while conquering self-doubt. And those are a lot of things, but I would love to hear your thoughts on how can people do this?
So I'm just going to highlight one of the people I covered in the book. So in a chapter I call The Perspective Harnesser, I have close friend of mine. He's a retired astronaut and Navy SEAL named Chris Cassidy. And I remember I've known Chris since we were both 17, since we were both at the Naval Academy Prep School, both doing push ups, 2 o'clock in the morning, and goose poop. So, I mean, I have seen him throughout the years, but something that he has shared with me that I have used in my own life is when he was going through buds And he had these incredible, terrible moments that anyone who's going through buds is going to face where you feel like you're going to break. He just thought of time like it was a rubber band and that it's really elastic. And the fact about it is that trying times end. Adversity is going to end. Putting yourself in a difficult position is going to end. And if you have that mindset and you know that these trials and tribulations are going to be part of your journey, but that you have the power to get through them by intentionally applying yourself and taking actions that lead to new habit formation, new behavior shifts, you're going to be able to get through it. And being passion struck is not like an end state. It's not as if, let's take Elon Musk. Elon Musk hasn't just reached this place, gotten $240 billion, and now he stops. What you see in these people who are living this passion struck life, people like Chris Cassidy, Elon Musk, General McChrystal, Admiral Stavridis, yourself, Gabby Bernstein, Jim Quick. I mean, what they do that is different from everyone else is they don't let self doubt, fear, everything that everyone experiences hinder them from continually taking action and making progress. And that's really at the root of being passion struck. It's aligning your mindset, your behaviors with the intentional micro choices that you're making daily that will either take you closer to your tsunami of greatness or your waterfall of despair. And it's your choice in your everyday life to pick which one you want to go after.
It's so, wow, that's so beautifully said. The thing with fear and making friends with fear, I think it may be obvious, but I don't think it is to people. And what you're saying is so true, that there's got to be a way that we befriend this natural fear of failure, this natural fear of all the things, right? We've all failed. We all know it doesn't necessarily kill you. It's not fun, but we learn from it. And I think that being able to normalize, part of what you're doing with this passion struck framework for people who want a framework, who are like, okay, can I read? I can follow this framework, is normalizing the experience of having anxiety or having fear about whatever it is, and going, what's the worst that's going to happen? I've failed before. I'm sure I'll fail again, but I've also succeeded before. And I think that I'm going to succeed, or I want to succeed. And again, that's harnessing the power of my own intention to do what it is I want to do. But I think that to do anything, to be any kind of a leader, you have to realize that failure is going to happen. I mean, what is your relationship to failure?
Man, I have had some colossal, failures in my life. I consider my divorce in many ways to be a failure. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing kind of snuck up on me. But obviously, looking back, there are things that I could have done better in the relationship than I did. Let me just explain it this way. When I was reaching some of my lowest points, I ended up going to see a career counselor, and he gave me this great analogy that I think is valuable for anyone. I was talking to him about my life and this hard charger, ambitious, I call it vanquisher in the book. I was just going after the goals. I was relentless. Nothing was going to stop me from achieving what I wanted to get as soon as I could get it.
Yep.
But looking upon that, he said to me, John, picture a stool in your head. Now picture that stool with one support. What happens when failure happens to that stool that you're on? It falls right over. So he said, you need to think about crafting your life as if it's a stool that has multiple supports. And those could be whatever you want them to be. For me, I made them the pillars of career, relationships, health, spirituality, and mental wellness. But
Mm-hmm.
it could be something for anyone else to help navigate this.
Right.
So, a huge failure for me is that this dream job I had always wanted, that I had finally gotten. I had a very difficult choice to make, and I talk about this in the book. Sometimes when you are following your convictions, when you are being true to your true values, you're forced to make a choice. Either you're going to go along with what the crowd does, or you're going to stand true to what you believe in. I call it sometimes being right means being alone, because sometimes in your convictions, you are going to be alone. And I remember having a discussion with Michael Dell, and I told Michael, I've got this really difficult choice. I'm leading this initiative, it's the biggest one in the company, but ultimately, it's not going to end up giving the company what it needs. In fact, it's going to fall very far short. But there's this other alternative that I can do that's not popular with the other senior executives, because the other senior executives were the brainchild of this other solution. But
Right.
at a fraction of the cost, it's going to do what's right for Dell. And I ended up picking the latter one.
Mhm.
And I knew I was signing my death warrant when I did it,
Yep.
because just as I thought, the wolves came after me and did everything they could to take me out. So, was it a failure? In some points, because it really derailed the career trajectory that I was on. But do I feel bad about it? I've never looked back, because I did what I felt was the right thing to do, and what was always part of my core values, which was having the courage to stand up for what you believe is right.
Now, it's a great example. All right, I have one more question for you. And you guys, if you're just tuning in, the book is Passion Struck 12 Powerful Principles to Unlock Your Purpose and Ignite Your Most Intentional Life. It just came out 2 days ago. You want to get this inspiring book. Okay, John, Miles, here's my question for you about boundaries. Personally, what has been your most challenging boundary struggle, and how have you overcome it if you have?
I have let too many of those boundary destroyers into my inner circle. And I think what ends up happening is you start having these people in your life, and it seems like it's fun and it's the life of the party, and you think they're taking you to places you want to go, where ultimately they're taking you down a dead end. And I think for me, realizing that at times has been difficult, because you get so close to them that when you're in the middle of it, you don't realize how much impact it's having on you. It's only when you start putting distance do you see the ramifications of how they are manipulating you and causing you to be living a life that's further and further from your aspirations. And I would say that once you get in the habit of practicing looking out for these different types of mosquitoes, you get much better at recognizing them and then dealing with them quicker. But at points in my career, I had let too many of them get in without properly setting my boundaries. And more importantly, being true to myself in achieving the goals that I set out for myself personally, that they were
Right on.
blocking.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for being here, John. I'm so appreciate your time and effort and energy for being here today with us. You guys, the book just came out. It's called Passion Struck 12 Powerful Principles to Unlock Your Purpose and Ignite Your Most Intentional Life. You do not want to miss it. Thank you so much, John. Tell us where we can find you.
So, Terri, thank you for that. I am very discoverable. My podcast is called the Passion Struck Podcast. It's in the health category. You can find me there. On all the social platforms, you can find me at John R. Miles. I've got two newsletters on LinkedIn. I have one called Work Intentionally that you can sign up for. And then on passionstruck.com, you can sign up for more of our personally oriented newsletter, which is called Live Intentionally. So, John R. Miles, passionstruck.com, YouTube, Passion Struck Podcast.
Right on. Thank you, thank you, thank you.